The first snowflake of November hit my windshield as I turned onto Pinewood Lane, and I knew what was coming. I had lived at the end of this private road in rural Vermont for 15 years, ever since my grandfather left me the property, and I had spent every winter since then making sure the half-mile stretch stayed passable. What I didn't know that morning was that my quiet life was about to get a whole lot more complicated, thanks to a woman named Patricia and her newly empowered position on the Riverside Meadows Homeowners Association board. My name is Quincy Vance, and I'm a software engineer who works from home. I bought a plow truck specifically for this road because nobody else was going to do it. The 5 other properties along Pinewood Lane were newer builds, constructed about 8 years ago when a developer bought the land adjacent to my grandfather's old farm. When they built those houses, they needed access, and the only way in was through my private road. My grandfather, being the generous man he was, granted them an easement for access to their properties. Simple enough. They could drive on it, but the road itself remained my property, maintained at my expense. I pulled into my driveway that morning after a grocery run, noticing a bright orange sign posted at the entrance to Pinewood Lane. My stomach dropped. I backed up and got out to read it. School bus stop effective November 15th in bold black letters. Below that, smaller text indicated that the bus would be turning around in the cul-de-sac at the end of the road, right in front of my house. I pulled out my phone and called the school district office. A pleasant woman named Sarah answered. "Hi, I'm calling about a new bus stop on Pinewood Lane," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "This is a private road. Who authorized this?" "Let me check," Sarah said. I heard typing in the background. "Oh yes, we received a formal request from the Riverside Meadows HOA. They provided documentation showing it was a community access road. The change was approved 3 weeks ago." "But it's not a community road," I said, feeling my jaw tighten. "It's my private property. I own it. The other residents just have an easement." "Sir, I'm just looking at what was submitted. If there's a dispute about the road's status, you'll need to take that up with the HOA. Our records show Patricia Thornton submitted the request with proper documentation." Of course it was Patricia. She had moved into one of the houses 2 years ago and immediately inserted herself into every community decision. Within 6 months, she was HOA president. I had avoided dealing with the HOA entirely because my property predated it and I wasn't part of their little kingdom. "The bus starts this route on Monday," Sarah continued. "If you have concerns, you should address them quickly." I thanked her and hung up, staring at the sign. It was Friday. I had 2 days to figure this out. That evening, I drove to Patricia's house, the largest one on the lane, a modern farmhouse painted an aggressive shade of gray. I knocked, and she answered wearing yoga pants and a sweater that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. She was in her late 40s with the kind of haircut that required asking to speak to managers. "Quincy," she said, not quite smiling, "what can I do for you?" "You can explain why you told the school district they could use my private road as a bus route," I said, keeping my tone measured. "Oh, that," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "It's just more convenient for everyone. The bus was stopping out on Route 9, and the kids had to walk down the whole lane. It's not safe." "It's my road, Patricia. You can't just make decisions about my property." "Actually, it's a shared access road," she said, her smile turning sharp. "The HOA consulted with our lawyer. Since multiple properties use it and there's an easement, it qualifies as a community amenity. The bus access benefits everyone." "An easement for access doesn't make it community property," I said, feeling heat rise in my face. "I own that road, I pay the taxes on it, and more importantly, I'm the only one who maintains it." "Well, if there are maintenance concerns, the HOA can discuss that," she said. "But the bus route is happening. It's already approved. If you have a problem, you can bring it up at the next board meeting." "I'm not part of your HOA. Your property isn't. But the road serves HOA properties, so it falls under our purview," she said. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have dinner on the stove." She closed the door in my face. I stood there for a moment, breathed deeply, and walked back to my truck. I wasn't going to let this go. As soon as I got home, I started digging through my grandfather's old files. I found the original deed, the plat map, and the easement agreement. Everything confirmed what I already knew. The road was mine. The easement granted access, nothing more. Monday morning arrived with gray skies and dropping temperatures. I watched from my kitchen window as the school bus turned onto Pinewood Lane for the first time, rumbling down toward my property. It stopped in front of my house, right where my driveway met the road, and sat there with its lights flashing for a good 10 minutes while kids from the other houses walked down. Then, it executed a clumsy three-point turn in my cul-de-sac, tearing up the gravel, and headed back out. I called my lawyer, David Chen, who I'd used for business contracts before. "They can't do this, right?" I asked after explaining the situation. "Not legally, no," David said. "But here's the thing. Fighting it could take time and money. You'd need to formally notify the school district, probably get an injunction, possibly sue the HOA for overstepping. Are you prepared for that?" "I'm prepared to defend my property rights," I said. "Then let me draft a letter. We'll start with a cease and desist to the HOA and a formal notice to the school district. That might resolve it without litigation." "Do it," I said. By Wednesday, David had sent the letters. By Thursday, I got a response from Patricia in the form of a certified letter. The HOA was claiming that by allowing the bus to use the road even once, I had established implied consent. Furthermore, they were now demanding that I bring the road up to community standards, including repaving, adding streetlights, and improving drainage. The estimated cost was $40,000. I laughed out loud reading it. Then I called David back. "They're trying to bully you," he said. "This is classic HOA overreach. They have no authority over your property, and these demands are baseless. But I'll be honest, Quincy, this is going to get ugly. Are you sure you want to engage?" "They started it," I said. "I'm finishing it." The next day, Friday, I woke up to the year's first real snowfall. 4 inches had come down overnight, and it was still falling. I watched as my neighbors tried to leave for work, their cars slipping and sliding on the unpaved road. I drank my coffee. I didn't move toward my plow truck. My phone rang at 7:30. It was Frank Davis from 2 houses down, a reasonable guy who mostly stayed out of HOA drama. "Hey, Quincy, you planning to plow today?" he asked, not rudely, just curious. "I haven't decided yet," I said. "Oh," he said. There was a pause. "Everything okay?" "You should ask your HOA president," I said. "She's been making a lot of decisions about my road lately. Maybe she has a plan for maintaining it too." I could hear the understanding click into place. "Right. Okay. Thanks anyway." By 9, the snow had stopped, but we had about 6 inches total. The road was impassable for regular cars. I could see Patricia trying to get her SUV out, wheels spinning uselessly. She gave up and marched to my door. I opened it before she could knock. "You need to plow the road," she demanded. "Why would I do that?" I asked. "Because that's what you do," she said, confusion and anger mixing on her face. "I plow my private road when I feel like it," I said. "You've made it very clear that you think this is a community amenity under HOA control, so I figure the HOA should maintain it." "That's ridiculous," she snapped. "You've always plowed it." "As a courtesy," I said, "which I no longer feel inclined to extend. You've got the school district running buses on my property without permission, and you're making demands about improvements I should make. Sounds like you think you're in charge, so go ahead and be in charge of snow removal too." "You can't do this," she said, her voice rising. "Watch me," I said, and closed the door. She pounded on it for a minute, then gave up. I watched her storm back to her house through the snow. The angry phone calls started within an hour. First Frank, then Jennifer Martin from the 3rd house, then Robert Keene. I let them all go to voicemail. Finally, Patricia called from what I assumed was a spoofed number, and I answered by accident. "This is childish," she said immediately. "There are families on this road. We need access." "You should have thought about that before you tried to take control of my property," I said. "I'm not taking control. I'm trying to make this a better community." "By making unilateral decisions about something you don't own," I said. "Here's the thing, Patricia. I've been plowing this road for 15 years, spending my money on gas and maintenance, giving my time, all so my neighbors could have an easier life. I never asked for anything in return. But now you're trying to tell me what I can and can't do with my own property, putting school buses on it, demanding improvements. So you know what? You can figure out the snow yourself." "You're holding us hostage," she said. "No, I'm just not doing you favors anymore," I said. "There's a difference." I hung up. My hands were shaking. I'm not a confrontational person by nature, but something about her entitlement had pushed me past my limit. The weekend was tense. The temperature stayed cold and nobody could get through the snow. On Saturday, I watched Patricia and her husband attempt to shovel the entire road by hand. They gave up after about 50 feet. On Sunday, Frank Davis drove out in a truck he borrowed from somewhere, chains on the tires, packing down the snow enough to make a single narrow lane. But more snow was forecast for Tuesday. Monday morning, the school bus didn't come down Pinewood Lane. I got a call from the school district. "Mr. Vance, this is Sarah again. The bus driver reported that your road is unplowed and unsafe. We're going to have to return the stop to Route 9 until the road is properly maintained." "Sounds reasonable," I said. "Ms. Thornton from the HOA is claiming you're deliberately blocking access," Sarah said, a note of exhaustion in her voice. "The road is my private property," I said. "I maintain it at my discretion. If the HOA wants to use it for bus access, they should have asked permission and discussed maintenance responsibilities first." "Right," Sarah said. "Well, just so you know, we're removing the stop. This is too complicated for us to deal with." Tuesday brought another 8 inches. This time, nobody even tried to leave. I worked from home anyway, so it didn't affect me. But by Wednesday morning, I could see the strain on my neighbors. Patricia was on her phone constantly, presumably trying to arrange some solution. Frank knocked on my door that afternoon. "Look," he said when I answered, "I get that you're angry. And honestly, Patricia shouldn't have done what she did. Most of us didn't even know about the bus thing until it happened." "Then maybe you should take it up with your HOA president," I said. "I'm planning to," Frank said. "But in the meantime, we've got people who need to get to work, kids who need to get to school. Is there any way we can work something out, just for now?" I studied him. Frank was a decent guy, a teacher at the high school, with 2 kids of his own. He wasn't the problem. "I'll plow it," I said. "But this doesn't change anything with Patricia. My lawyer has already sent cease and desist letters about the bus route and the HOA's claims on my road. If she backs off, I'll keep plowing like I always have. If she doesn't, then the HOA can figure out maintenance on their own." "Fair enough," Frank said. "I'll talk to the others. And Quincy? For what it's worth, I'm sorry. She doesn't speak for all of us." I plowed that afternoon. The road cleared easily with my truck, the same way it had for 15 years. But something had shifted. I wasn't doing it out of neighborly goodwill anymore. I was doing it conditionally, and everyone knew it. The HOA emergency meeting happened that Friday evening. Frank had told me about it, even though I wasn't a member. According to him, there was going to be a vote on how to handle the road situation. I didn't attend, but Frank called me afterward. "It got heated," he said. "Patricia insisted that you're required to maintain the road because of the easement agreement. I pointed out that the easement doesn't say anything about maintenance. She said we should sue you. Jennifer Martin said that was insane. Robert Keene suggested we take up a collection to pay for professional plowing. Patricia voted that down." "Let me guess," I said. "She doesn't want to admit she was wrong." "Exactly," Frank said. "She's doubled down. She's claiming that you're in violation of the easement by making the road unreasonably difficult to use. Her husband is a lawyer, apparently, and he's backing her up on this." "David already anticipated that argument," I said. "An easement for access doesn't require the property owner to maintain a certain standard. If the road is truly impassable, the easement holders can maintain it themselves. But they can't force me to do it. And they definitely can't make decisions about how it's used." "I don't know what's going to happen," Frank said. "But I wanted to give you a heads up. She's talking about taking legal action." "Let her try," I said. December arrived with a vengeance. We got hit with a major storm system that dropped nearly 2 feet of snow over 3 days. I didn't plow. I watched from my window as the snow piled up, covering the road, making it completely impassable. My house was warm, my pantry was full, and my internet worked fine. I had everything I needed. Patricia showed up at my door on the second day, absolutely furious. "This is unacceptable," she said the moment I opened the door. "We're completely snowed in. You have to plow." "No, I don't," I said calmly. "We can't get out. We can't get to work. We can't get groceries. We can't do anything," she said, her voice shaking with anger. "Sounds like a tough situation," I said. "Maybe the HOA should invest in snow removal equipment." "You're being vindictive," she spat. "I'm declining to provide a free service to people who are trying to take control of my property," I said. "That's not vindictive. That's just basic self-respect." "My husband is drafting a lawsuit," she said. "You're violating the easement agreement by making the road unusable." "Your husband can draft whatever he wants," I said, "but he's going to lose. The easement gives you the right to cross my property. It doesn't give you the right to demand that I make it convenient for you. If the road is truly unusable, you're legally entitled to maintain it yourself, so get a plow truck and do it." "This is my property too," she said, her face red. "No, Patricia, it's not. That's the whole point. This is my road, my property. You have an easement to use it, nothing more. You've been treating it like your personal domain, making decisions without consulting me. And now you're upset that I'm not bending over backward to accommodate you anymore. The rest of the neighborhood shouldn't suffer because you're throwing a tantrum," she said. "The rest of the neighborhood is suffering because you tried to overstep your authority," I said. "Talk to them about it." I closed the door. That evening, I got a call from an unknown number. When I answered, a man's voice came through, smooth and professional. "Mr. Vance, this is Gregory Thornton, Patricia's husband. I think we got off on the wrong foot here." "Did we?" I asked. "I understand there's been some confusion about the road situation," he said. "I'd like to clarify a few things, lawyer to lawyer, if you don't mind." "I'm not a lawyer," I said, "but my lawyer is David Chen. You're welcome to clarify things with him." "This doesn't need to involve attorneys," Gregory said, his tone hardening slightly. "We can work this out between reasonable people." "Your wife involved attorneys when she had the HOA lawyer look into my road," I said. "She involved the school district when she authorized bus access without my permission. She involved everyone except me, the actual property owner. So no, Gregory, we're past the point of working this out informally. You want to sue me? Go ahead. But you're going to lose, and you're going to waste a lot of money doing it." "The easement agreement requires you to maintain reasonable access," he said, dropping the friendly pretense. "Show me where it says that," I said. "I've read the agreement. It grants an easement for access, period. There's nothing about maintenance obligations, nothing about standards, nothing that gives the HOA any authority over how I manage my property." "You're making the road unusable," he said. "No, the snow is making the road unusable," I said. "I'm just not clearing it. Big difference. And legally speaking, if you want the snow cleared, you're welcome to clear it yourself. The easement allows you access, which includes access for maintenance purposes." There was a long pause. "You're going to regret this," he said. "Is that a threat?" I asked. "It's a prediction," he said, and hung up. I immediately called David and told him about the conversation. "Good," David said. "Let them sue. We'll countersue for harassment and abuse of process. The easement agreement is crystal clear. They have no case." Gregory seemed pretty confident, I said. "Lawyers often do, especially when they're used to intimidating people," David said. "But confidence doesn't win cases. Facts do, and the facts are on your side." The next morning, I woke up to find that someone had called the county sheriff. A deputy knocked on my door around 10. "Mr. Vance?" he asked, a young guy who looked apologetic. "That's me," I said. "I got a complaint that you're blocking access to several properties," he said. "Something about a private road?" I explained the situation, showed him the deed and easement agreement, and walked him through everything that had happened. "So let me get this straight," he said. "They want to use your road, but they also want to tell you how to manage it, and now they're mad that you're not plowing it?" "That's about right," I said. He shook his head. "This is a civil matter. I can't do anything about it. If they're not happy with the easement arrangement, they need to take it up in court or work something out with you directly." "Can you tell them that?" I asked. "I'll include it in my report," he said. "But between you and me, HOA disputes are the worst. People get crazy about property lines and rules. I'd recommend you and your neighbors figure out some kind of agreement before this gets worse." "I'm open to agreements," I said, "but they have to start with respecting that this is my property." He nodded and left. I watched him stop at Patricia's house on his way out. She came outside and spoke with him for several minutes, gesturing emphatically. He shook his head several times, handed her something that looked like a card, and drove off. That afternoon, Frank organized a group conversation. He, Jennifer, Robert, and the couple from the fifth house, Mike and Lisa Brennan, all came to my door together. "We want to apologize," Jennifer said right away. She was in her 30s, a nurse who worked night shifts. Most of us had no idea Patricia was doing all this stuff. She told us she was handling community improvements, but she never said she was claiming authority over your road. "We're prepared to make this right," Robert added. He was retired, a former accountant. "Whatever it takes." "What I need is simple," I said. Patricia backs off. "The HOA acknowledges in writing that this is my private road and they have no authority over it. No more unauthorized use, no more demands for improvements, no more involving third parties without my permission." "Done," Frank said immediately. "We'll call an HOA meeting and pass a resolution." "And in exchange?" Lisa asked. She was holding her toddler on her hip, looking exhausted. "In exchange, things go back to normal," I said. "I'll plow the road like I always have, but with the understanding that it's a courtesy, not an obligation." "What about the plowing costs?" Mike asked. "It's not fair that you've been covering everything all these years. We should at least reimburse you for gas and maintenance." I considered it. "I appreciate the offer, but I don't want to turn this into a financial arrangement. That gets complicated. Just respect that it's my property and we'll be fine." "Patricia isn't going to like this," Jennifer said quietly. "Patricia doesn't have to like it," Frank said firmly. "She's created this mess. The rest of us just want to live here peacefully." They left and I felt a small sense of relief. Maybe this could be resolved without further escalation. I was wrong. The lawsuit arrived the following week, delivered by a process server who looked uncomfortable handing it over. Patricia and Gregory Thornton, along with the Riverside Meadows HOA, were suing me for breach of easement, demanding that I maintain the road to certain standards and seeking damages for hardship and inconvenience. They were also asking for an injunction requiring me to plow within 24 hours of any snowfall. I called David immediately. "This is exactly what we expected," he said after I read him the complaint. "It's baseless, but we'll need to respond. I'll draft an answer and a motion to dismiss. In the meantime, don't communicate with them directly about anything related to this case." "What about the road?" I asked. "Do I have to plow it while this is pending?" "That's up to you," David said. "The lawsuit doesn't create any obligation you didn't have before, which is to say, none. But strategically, it might not look great if people can't access their homes because of this dispute." "What about the other neighbors?" I asked. "They're trying to work this out." "That's different," David said. "If they want to reach a settlement, that's worth pursuing. But make sure any agreement is in writing and properly documented, and make sure Patricia is bound by it." The HOA meeting Frank had promised happened the next week. I attended this time, sitting in Patricia's living room with the other residents. Patricia looked like she wanted to throw me out, but she kept her composure. "We're here to discuss the road maintenance situation," Frank said, acting as moderator. He'd printed out an agenda, taking this seriously. "There's nothing to discuss," Patricia said immediately. "I've filed a lawsuit to protect the interests of this community. The road is a shared resource, and Quincy has been negligent in maintaining it." "The road isn't a shared resource," Frank said. "We've all reviewed the easement agreement. It's Quincy's private property. We have the right to use it, but he has no legal obligation to maintain it." "That's not what my husband says," Patricia countered. "With respect to your husband, he's wrong," Robert said. He'd done his own research, apparently, and had printouts of Vermont property law. I found several cases addressing this exact situation. An easement for access doesn't create a duty to maintain, unless the easement specifically says so. Ours doesn't. "Then we need to amend the easement," Patricia said. "You can't unilaterally amend an easement," Jennifer pointed out. "Quincy would have to agree to any changes." "Which I won't," I said. "I'm not changing anything. You all have access to my road. I've been maintaining it as a courtesy. If we can agree on appropriate boundaries and respect for my property rights, I'll continue maintaining it. That's the deal." "This is extortion," Patricia said. "No, it's a property owner setting reasonable boundaries," Frank said. "Patricia, you've overstepped repeatedly. You authorized bus access without consulting Quincy. You made demands for improvements. You tried to claim HOA authority over his property. This is all on you." "I was trying to improve our community," she said, her voice rising. "By trampling on someone else's rights," Lisa said. "That's not improvement. That's just being a bully." Patricia stood up. Her face flushed. I don't have to listen to this. The lawsuit will settle it. Then you're wasting everyone's time and money, Mike said, because you're going to lose. Patricia stormed out of her own living room. Gregory appeared from another room, looking embarrassed. I apologize for my wife, he said stiffly. She's very passionate about this community. She's passionate about being in control, Frank said. That's different. I'll talk to her, Gregory said. Maybe we can find a resolution. But talking to Patricia accomplished nothing. She refused to back down, insisting that the lawsuit would vindicate her position. Over the next few weeks, the legal process ground forward. David filed our response in motion to dismiss. Patricia's lawyer filed a response to that. Meanwhile, more snow fell, and I continued not plowing. The other residents found a solution. They pooled money and hired a local contractor with a plow truck to clear the road after each snowfall. It cost them $300 per storm, plus a retainer to ensure availability. I felt a little guilty about it, but Frank assured me they didn't blame me. This is Patricia's doing, not yours, he said. And honestly, it's probably better this way. Now we have a formal arrangement that doesn't depend on your generosity. Christmas came and went. The lawsuit dragged on. In February, we had our first hearing, a motion hearing on our request to dismiss the case. I met David at the Bennington County Courthouse, a historic building with high ceilings and worn wooden floors. Judge Martha Reynolds was presiding, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and no patience for nonsense. Patricia and Gregory sat on the other side of the courtroom with their lawyer, a slick guy named Marcus Webb who looked expensive. Webb argued first, claiming that the easement carried an implicit duty to maintain reasonable access, that I was acting in bad faith by refusing to plow, and that the community had relied on my past practice of maintenance. David countered with the text of the easement itself, case law, and the basic principle that you can't impose obligations on a property owner that they didn't agree to. Judge Reynolds listened to both sides, asked a few pointed questions, and then ruled from the bench. The easement agreement is unambiguous, she said. It grants the defendants a right of access. It says nothing about maintenance obligations. The plaintiff's argument that past practice creates a binding duty is not supported by Vermont law. The defendant was providing a courtesy, not fulfilling a legal obligation. The motion to dismiss is granted. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Patricia looked stunned. Gregory whispered something to Webb, who nodded and stood. Your Honor, we'd like to request permission to amend the complaint, Webb said. On what basis? Judge Reynolds asked. We believe there may be grounds for a claim of easement by prescription or adverse possession principles, Webb said. Pray. Those are completely different legal theories that would require proof of continuous, open, and hostile use, Judge Reynolds said, none of which apply here since the defendant granted permission for the use. Motion denied. This case is dismissed with prejudice. Next case. And just like that, it was over. We walked out of the courthouse into the cold February air. What does with prejudice mean? I asked David. It means they can't refile the same claim, he said, grinning. It's done. You won. I should have felt triumphant, but mostly I just felt tired. This whole thing had been exhausting and unnecessary. That evening, Frank called. We heard about the ruling, he said. Congratulations. And listen, we had another HOA meeting. Patricia has resigned as president. Jennifer is taking over. We want to do this right. Would you be willing to meet with the new board and work out a formal agreement? What kind of agreement? I asked. Something that acknowledges your property rights, establishes appropriate boundaries for HOA actions, and maybe sets up a maintenance arrangement that's fair to everyone, Frank said. No pressure, but we'd like to try. I agreed to meet. The following week, I sat down with Jennifer, Frank, Robert, and Lisa in Jennifer's dining room. Patricia was notably absent. First, we want to apologize officially, Jennifer said. The HOA acted inappropriately under Patricia's leadership. We've reviewed all the actions she took, and none of them were properly authorized by the full board. The bus route, the demands for improvements, all of it was her acting unilaterally. I appreciate that, I said. Second, we want to formalize our understanding of the road situation, Robert said, sliding a document across the table. We had a lawyer draft this. It's a declaration that acknowledges your ownership of the road, confirms the existing easement terms, and explicitly states that the HOA has no authority over your property. We'll file it with the county clerk so it's part of the public record. I read through it. It was clear and straightforward, exactly what I'd wanted all along. This is good, I said. I'll have my lawyer review it, but I think this works. Third, the maintenance issue, Lisa said. We're paying a contractor right now, and it's fine. But if you're willing, we'd prefer to have you doing it like before. We know your equipment, we trust you, and honestly, it feels better supporting a neighbor than some random company. We'll pay you the same rate we're paying the contractor, $400 per storm, plus a $2,000 annual retainer. You don't have to pay me, I said. We want to, Frank said. It's not right that you've been covering all the costs. This way it's a proper business arrangement. You provide a service, we compensate you fairly. No favors, no awkwardness. I thought about it. The money would cover my fuel, maintenance, and time. It would also formalize the relationship, making it clear that I was maintaining the road by agreement, not obligation. Okay, I said, let's do it. We shook hands, and for the first time in months I felt like things were going to be okay. The arrangement worked perfectly. Spring came, the snow melted, and life on Pinewood Lane returned to normal. I maintained the road, they paid me, and everyone was happy. Patricia kept to herself, barely acknowledging anyone. According to Frank, she and Gregory were thinking about moving, but the story wasn't quite over. In late April, I got a call from Sarah at the school district. Mr. Vance, I have an unusual question, she said. Would you be willing to allow the bus to use Pinewood Lane again? We've had several requests from parents, and given that the road situation seems to be resolved, I wanted to ask directly. I'd need to see a formal agreement, I said. Something that specifies the terms, acknowledges my ownership, and establishes liability protections. We can do that, Sarah said. Our legal department can draft something. The agreement arrived 2 weeks later. It was thorough and professional, granting the school district permission to access the road for bus purposes, acknowledging my ownership, including liability insurance, and specifying that I could revoke permission with 30 days' notice if problems arose. I signed it. The bus returned in May for the last few weeks of the school year. It was strange watching it come down the lane again, but this time it felt different. This time it was there because I'd agreed to it, not because someone had decided for me. Summer arrived, and with it, a for sale sign went up in front of Patricia's house. I wasn't surprised. Frank told me she'd barely spoken to anyone since the lawsuit failed. She can't handle not being in charge, he said. It's probably better for everyone if she moves on. The house sold quickly to a young couple with a baby. They introduced themselves to me in July, friendly and enthusiastic about the neighborhood. The husband, Daniel, asked about the road situation right away. We heard there was some drama with the previous owner, he said. Just want to make sure we understand the arrangement. I explained everything. He nodded along, completely understanding. Makes perfect sense, he said. It's your property. Thanks for maintaining it and for being willing to work with everyone. That's really cool of you. It was refreshing to deal with someone reasonable. August brought a letter from Patricia, forwarded to me by Frank. She'd moved to Connecticut, apparently, and wanted to have the last word. The letter was long and bitter, insisting that she'd been trying to help the community, that I'd been unreasonable, that the HOA should have had more authority. She ended by saying she hoped I was happy with the chaos I'd caused. I read it once, shook my head, and threw it away. Some people never learn. Fall arrived, and with it, the knowledge that winter would soon return. I serviced my plow truck, made sure everything was in good working order, and stocked up on fuel. When the first snow came in November, I was ready. I plowed Pinewood Lane at dawn, the same way I had for 15 years. But now I did it as part of a fair agreement with everyone's roles and responsibilities clear. Frank stopped by later that day. Road looks great, he said. Thanks for getting it done so early. No problem, I said. It's what I signed up for. You know, Frank said, I was thinking, this whole thing with Patricia was crazy, but in a weird way, maybe it was good. We've got proper agreements now. Everything's documented, and we all understand where we stand. It's more solid than before. That's one way to look at it, I said. I'm serious, Frank said. Before, you were doing us this huge favor, and we were just taking it for granted. Now it's a real partnership. That's healthier. He was right, I realized. As frustrating as the whole experience had been, it had forced everyone to confront the reality of the situation and create a proper framework. The road was still mine, but now everyone understood what that meant, and we had agreements that protected everyone's interests. December brought heavy snow, but I handled it efficiently. The road stayed clear, the residents were happy, and life continued peacefully. Sometimes I'd see the bus coming down the lane and remember how angry I'd been when Patricia made that decision without asking. Now it didn't bother me at all. The difference was consent, respect, and proper procedure. In January, Jennifer called to tell me the HOA was making a donation in my name to the local volunteer fire department. We realized you've been maintaining this road for years without asking for anything, she said. Even though you're getting paid now, we wanted to acknowledge everything you did before. The fire department seemed like a good choice since they use this road too when needed. That's very thoughtful, I said, genuinely touched. Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer said. You could have made this a lot harder. You could have demanded money from the beginning, or restricted access, or any number of things. Instead, you just asked for basic respect, which is what you deserved all along. February brought one final piece of closure. I received a formal apology letter from the Riverside Meadows HOA board, signed by all current members, acknowledging the overreach that had occurred under previous leadership and thanking me for my willingness to work with them to find a resolution. They also included a gift certificate to the local steakhouse, which made me laugh. I kept the letter. It felt important to have that acknowledgement in writing, not because I needed validation, but because it represented something larger. It was proof that even when things go sideways, even when someone tries to overstep and take control, it's possible to push back, stand your ground, and eventually reach a reasonable resolution. The spring thaw came early that year, melting the snow and revealing the gravel road beneath. I drove down to check for winter damage, looking for washouts or areas that needed grading. Everything looked good. The road had held up well. As I stood there looking at this half-mile stretch of gravel that had caused so much trouble, I thought about property rights, community relationships, and the importance of clear agreements. My grandfather had been generous in granting the easement, but he'd also been careful to maintain ownership. That distinction had seemed unimportant for years until it suddenly became the most important thing. I thought about Patricia, too, and her fundamental misunderstanding of authority. She'd believed that being HOA president gave her power over everything in the community, including things that weren't part of the HOA. She'd seen my willingness to help as a weakness and my road as a resource to be exploited. When I'd pushed back, she'd escalated instead of reconsidering. Some people are so invested in being right that they can't admit when they're wrong. But I also thought about Frank, Jennifer, Robert, Lisa, Mike, and the others who'd been willing to listen, learn, and find a better way forward. They were the reason this story had a happy ending. Without their willingness to see reason and take action, I might still be fighting with an intransigent HOA board, or worse, I might have given up and let them walk all over me. The experience had taught me something important about boundaries. For years, I'd maintained the road without complaint, never asking for recognition or compensation. I'd seen it as part of being a good neighbor. And it was, to a point. But when someone takes your generosity for granted and tries to turn it into an obligation, that's when you have to draw a line. Being kind doesn't mean being a doormat. Being generous doesn't mean surrendering your rights. I got back in my truck and drove home, satisfied with how everything had turned out. The road was mine. The agreements were clear. The community was harmonious. And when winter came again, I'd be ready to plow, not because I had to, but because I'd chosen to, on terms that respected everyone involved. That evening, I sat on my porch with a beer, watching the sunset over the Vermont hills. Daniel and his wife walked by with their baby in a stroller, and they waved. I waved back. This was what I'd wanted all along: a quiet life on my property, good relationships with my neighbors, and respect for the boundaries that keep communities healthy. The HOA sign at the entrance to Pinewood Lane had been updated. It now said, Private Road Riverside Meadows Access. Small change, but it mattered. It acknowledged the reality that Patricia had tried to obscure. I thought about posting the whole story online, on one of those HOA horror story forums. It would probably go viral. People love stories about HOA overreach and the homeowners who fight back. But I decided against it. The story was over, the problem was solved, and dragging it back into the spotlight served no purpose. Besides, I had work to do. Spring meant maintenance on the road, grading and filling in low spots before summer. I'd ordered gravel to be delivered in May. The HOA had offered to split the cost, another sign that we'd reached a genuine partnership. I'd accepted. As darkness fell, I went inside, content with my quiet life at the end of Pinewood Lane. The road was still mine. I was still the only one who plowed it in winter. But now everyone knew it, respected it, and compensated me fairly for it. That was all I'd ever wanted. Sometimes the best victories aren't about crushing your opponents. They're about standing firm, defending your rights, and ultimately finding a way to live together that works for everyone. Patricia had tried to take control. She'd failed. And in failing, she'd forced everyone else to confront the reality of the situation and build something more honest and sustainable. I slept well that night, the way you do when a long struggle finally reaches a satisfying conclusion. My property was secure. My boundaries were respected. My community was healthy. And when the next snow fell, I'd be ready, with a plow truck, a fair contract, and the satisfaction of knowing I'd stood my ground when it mattered most. The end of this story wasn't dramatic. There was no final confrontation, no stunning courtroom revelation, no moment of Patricia seeing the error of her ways. Real life usually isn't that neat. But it was an ending nonetheless, the kind where everyone finds their proper place and life continues with a little more clarity and a lot less drama. Months later, I ran into Marcus Webb, Patricia's lawyer, at a coffee shop in town. He recognized me and came over looking sheepish. "I owe you an apology," he said. "That case was a loser from the start. I told the Thorntons that, but they insisted on pursuing it. Sometimes clients don't want to hear the truth." "No hard feelings," I said. "You were doing your job." "Still," he said, "it was a waste of everyone's time and money. Property law is pretty clear on these issues. I don't know what Patricia was thinking." "She was thinking she was in charge," I said, "and she didn't like being told otherwise." He nodded ruefully and left. The encounter stuck with me. Even Patricia's own lawyer had known the case was baseless. She'd pushed forward anyway, driven by pride and the need to win. It was a cautionary tale about letting ego override common sense. Summer passed in peaceful productivity. I worked on my software projects, maintained the road, and enjoyed the Vermont weather. The new couple, Daniel and his wife Emma, fit into the neighborhood seamlessly. They were respectful, friendly, and drama-free. Everything Patricia hadn't been. In September, Frank was elected HOA president officially. He'd been acting president since Patricia left, but now it was formalized. His first official act was to institute a new rule requiring board approval for any actions affecting non-HOA properties or external parties. It was a direct response to Patricia's unilateral decision-making, ensuring it couldn't happen again. "We learned our lesson," Frank told me. "One person shouldn't have that much unchecked authority. Even with good intentions, it leads to problems." October brought the first frost, a reminder that winter was coming. I checked my plow truck, replaced the hydraulic fluid, and sharpened the blade. Everything was ready. This would be my 16th winter maintaining Pinewood Lane, but the first where I was being properly compensated for it. Jennifer stopped by with the annual retainer check and a batch of homemade cookies. "The neighborhood really appreciates what you do," she said. "I know the money is part of it now, but I wanted you to know it's more than that. You make this place livable in winter. That matters." "I appreciate that," I said, "and I appreciate the cookies." She laughed. "Emma made those, actually. She's trying to get to know everyone. She wanted to contribute something." "She seems great," I said. "They both do." "They are," Jennifer said. "It's nice having normal, reasonable people in that house. Makes you realize how toxic Patricia was." After she left, I ate a cookie and thought about how much had changed in a year. Last fall, I'd been on the edge of a property rights war, facing an aggressive HOA president who thought she could steamroll over me. Now I had a fair agreement, a reasonable HOA board, and peace in the neighborhood. The difference was stark. November brought the first snow, 3 inches overnight. I was up at 5, had the plow on the truck by 5:30, and cleared the road by 6:15. My phone pinged with a Venmo notification shortly after. Frank had sent the storm payment with a note. "Thanks for keeping us mobile." It was a small thing, but it represented everything that had changed: respect, fair compensation, and mutual appreciation. This was how neighbor relationships should work. December was busy with holiday preparations. The HOA organized a neighborhood party at Frank's house, and for the first time, I attended. It was casual and fun, with everyone bringing food and drinks. We told stories, laughed, and enjoyed each other's company. Nobody mentioned Patricia or the road drama. It was ancient history. As the year drew to a close, I reflected on everything that had happened. The conflict with Patricia had been stressful and frustrating, but it had also clarified boundaries and created better systems. Sometimes you need disruption to reveal problems and force solutions. Patricia's overreach had been the disruption. The fair agreements and mutual respect were the solutions. New Year's Eve came, and I stood on my porch watching fireworks in the distance, probably from the town center 5 miles away. Pinewood Lane was quiet and peaceful, covered in fresh snow that I'd plow in the morning. My road, my responsibility, my choice. The new year brought more snow, as Vermont winters do. I plowed regularly, maintained the road, and collected fair payment for my work. The system functioned smoothly, proof that proper agreements and mutual respect make everything easier. In February, I received an email from Sarah at the school district. They were nominating me for a Community Service Award for maintaining safe school bus access in challenging winter conditions. I was touched but declined the nomination. "I'm just doing what I'm paid to do," I wrote back. "But thank you for thinking of me." She replied, saying she understood, but that the bus drivers all appreciated having a reliable, well-maintained route. That felt good to hear. March brought the spring thaw, and with it, the end of another plowing season. I'd cleared Pinewood Lane successfully through 16 storms, maintaining safe access for 6 households and the school bus. The road had held up well, and everyone was satisfied with the arrangement. As I write this, sitting on my porch on a warm spring evening, I can see the entire length of Pinewood Lane stretching out before me. It's just a gravel road, half a mile long, unremarkable in most ways, but it represents something important. The principle that property rights matter, that agreements must be fair and consensual, and that even when conflicts arise, reasonable people can find solutions. Patricia tried to take control of something that wasn't hers. She failed. The community learned from it, and in the end, everyone ended up better off with clearer agreements and healthier boundaries. That's a good outcome from what could have been a much worse situation. The road is still mine. I'm still the only one who plows it in winter. But now everyone understands what that means, respects it, and compensates me fairly for it. That's all I ever wanted. That's all anyone should want: fair treatment, respect for rights, and honest agreements. Pinewood Lane taught me that being generous doesn't mean being a pushover, that boundaries are healthy, and that standing up for yourself can lead to better outcomes for everyone. Those are lessons worth learning, even if the learning process was frustrating and stressful. As the sun sets on another day in Vermont, I'm grateful for my property, my neighbors, and the hard-won agreements that keep our community functioning smoothly. The drama is over. The road is maintained. Life is good. And when next winter comes, I'll be ready to plow again, not because I have to, but because I choose to, on terms that respect everyone involved. That's exactly how it should be.